Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We got a toad sitting in the mud here, and you know what that means. Time for the Lizardmen on an aquatics map. We're here in Helfen, going to be taking on the Bretonnians, hence the orange sherbet Slaan here, who is of course the high Slaan, and he's got Tempest to take down flying units and lords. And what do you know, my opponent has brought Lewin and a unit of Pegasus Knights, so we're going to have some fun. He's also got Apotheosis for the healing. Blood Statuette of Spite is a direct damage, good against cavalry and infantry. The Aura of Pretzels gives a plus 30 armor and extra melee defense. Shield of the Old Ones, of course, is the magic resistance and banishment to go along with it. We've got a Skink Chief up on the Stegodon here to give him that long-range, armor-piercing, anti-large option. We've also got a Saurus Scar Veteran just to help protect the Slaan Mage Priest here. We've also got 2 units of Kroxigors for anti-infantry with a front line of Skinks. 4 Skink cohorts of Javelins, 2 on each flanks, with 4 regular Skink cohorts up the center. We've also got a Revivification Crystal. Good old Gary here, who is one of my first sponsors. Big thanks to Gary once again. Shout out to him. And looking beautiful there. We've also got a Feral Bastiladon, which normally I'm not a big fan of the Feral Dinos, but I figured, hey, against Bretonnia, I had, 700 extra points. These guys are relatively cheap, anti-infantry armor piercing. They don't have the best stats, relatively poor leadership, but 140 armor, a decent amount of health, and cause terror as well, which, of course, is always going to be good against peasants. So, yeah, it's a fairly straightforward build. We've also got 2 units of Pterodon Riders doing some early skirmishing here with Lewin and his Royal Pegasus Knights. For the Bretonnians, we've got a couple units of Questing Knights. Looks like 1, 2 units of Questing Knights. I believe that's probably it. Yep. Front line's going to be a mix of peasants. We've got Spearmen at Arms with shields, 2 of them on each flank. Center line's going to be Foot Squires and Battle Pilgrims. Honestly, Battle Pilgrims, we'll talk a little bit more about them after, but they're one of the least cost-effective kind of damage dealer type infantry. We'll talk about why after the battle, but I'm really not a fan of Battle Pilgrims. Foot Squires can be cost-effective in certain very specific situations, but I'm also not a big fan of them either. I think, honestly, you need to win your bread and butter with Bretonnia, with the anti-large infantry, has higher melee defense, and then of course you need to use that anvil for the hammer of the heavy cavalry. We've also got a couple of pox arrows here, a damsel lore of life, very good picks, a couple of men-at-arms with pole arms, and yeah, that's it. So fairly straightforward. Grail relic, of course, all that jazz. So yeah, let's put it into full gear. First things first, I'm going to be doing some early skirmishing. We had wanted to engage, but decided to pull away just because my opponent's pox arrows are here. So we're going to kind of hook around and just try and mirror wherever Lewin comes in to get some early fire on. Looks like my opponent's trying to squeak through. I don't know if you can actually get through right there. That would be nice, but looks like these Questing Knights going to be coming around the mountain here. As she comes, as they say, for the lady and all that jazz. I'm going to be just firing away, getting ready to open up with that Overcast Tempest there. You guys will see the template for it pop up in just a second. And Tempest was changed a little bit since the earlier days of Total War Warhammer 2. It is now not a hard snare, but rather a minus 75% movement. So you can see Lewin all of a sudden it gets super slow. He only has 10 speed, so he might as well be hard snared. He's also going to take quite a bit of damage from that. You can see healing up those Royal Pegasus Knights as they are taking quite a bit of Pterodon Rider fire. We also have opened up with the Skink Javelins, just going to be unloading into Lewin, so although they don't do the most missile damage, they have a really high volume of fire. Questing Knights charging in, going to be countercharged with Kroxigors. Lewin himself also dropping down into combat here. You can see the heavy-hitting Kroxigors. Both of these units are really meant versus infantry, but armor-piercing nonetheless versus each other. We're going to be bringing that Saurus Scar Veteran over to counter Lewin in just a moment here. All across the line, just the engagement getting underway with peasants and skinks clashing in the muck and mire here. The Royal Pegasus Knights are going to try and get a charge on the Kroxigors here, but this is one of the issues with Royal Pegasus Knights. Look how only a couple of unit models connect on the charge. The rest get hung up on Skinks, which is really bad, and then they're going to take the Skink Javelin fire, which, I mean, these little guys only have 80 armor at the end of the day. Even with that physical resistance, it's not the most. Dropping that Banishment and Shield of the Old Ones on the far side of the battlefield. Slaan just chilling here like he loves to do. Lewin managed to get back up in the air and is going to try and charge the Slaan here, but we're immediately going to switch this guy into melee and just bull rush Lewin here. The Stegodon's got the mass to keep him pinned in place. while the Saurus Scar Vet is going to come in from behind and give him that anti-large armor-piercing business right in the behind. And yeah, Lewin's not going to like that too much. He's going to be routed off relatively shortly here, unfortunately for the Bretonnians. And as soon as he gets back up in the air, I've got enough Winds of Magic with the Slaan here. I'm going to drop another Overcast Tempest just to make sure we finish Lewin off. We're going to use the Skink Chief's bow and the Overcast Tempest. So here we go. Unfortunately, the High King getting snared at this point. Just the madness of the Tempest coming in here. It's a very, very flashy spell animation. And yeah, Lewin unfortunately is going to be dropping here in just a moment with that massive bolt thrower shooting at him, as well as the magic damage from the Tempest itself. Beautiful battle cinematics in the back. Unfortunately, Gary has gotten himself a little bit isolated here. He's surrounded by these peasants, and I mean, obviously, foot squires aren't going to be great versus large, but they do have armor piercing here. There's a lot of pole arms as well, so a little bit of a pitch situation for Gary. But now you can see just the angry Bastiladon charging in. Despite the healing that the Bretonnians are receiving, we're also dropping some Apotheosis on some of these Skinks just to keep them fighting in here. And the mad Bastiladon just charging in the front line, going to be doing a massive amount of shock damage here, and probably causing a lot of these units to tear routes. So, meanwhile, over on the far side, this Feral Bastiladon has been an absolute menace. You can see it terror routing a lot of these troops over on the far side. It's been able to pretty much keep all the peasants over on this far side offline, so definitely ended up paying for itself. Normally I'm not a huge fan of the feral monsters, but in this case, just having that nice cheap terror option is very powerful against Bretonnian peasants, since my opponent brought a pretty wide infantry build. But yeah, you can see Skinks pursuing the routing peasants across the mire here. And yeah, over on this side, the Skinks are doing relatively well, fighting admirably up against peasants. Obviously, there's a bit of a wet noodle contest, but in the water, when they're in the muck, in the mire, the Skinks definitely will excel in this type of combat here. See, the Croc scores have regrouped, but no need to bring them back at this point. We've brought the Stegodon in to support Gary since he was getting relatively low, and lots of healing magic being dropped continuously. You can see that Revification Crystal receiving that cold-blooded just to keep him in that combat as long as possible. And as the Scarvet has gotten over, just getting on this damsel here, trying to shut her down, keep her from casting too many more spells here. And yeah, the Slaan just chilling, having done most of his work already. Only 27 kills from those banishments, but still, the Tempest was enough to shut down Lewin, and very powerful in that particular matchup. I don't think that the High Slaan is necessarily the most competitive pick here. It's a bit of a gamble. I mean, he's not completely useless if your opponent doesn't bring a flying unit. He still has the Banishment, the Blood Statuette, Apotheosis, which in and of itself is very useful in healing. But it's definitely better, you get more payout if your opponent brings a Flying Lord. So the fact that my opponent brought Lewin there really played into my hands. The Saurus Scarvet also did his job of kind of protecting the Slaan there, just countering Lewin when he came down to the ground. Skink Chief did some nice job kind of pulling my opponent in and causing some terror in that late game. Like I was saying with that Feral Bastiladon, really nice work there. Croc scores managed to rack up some nice kills, and some of these Skinks, man, 77 kills on Skinks is not too shabby. 48 on these guys as well, pretty decent all around. So for my opponent, I definitely agree with the pick of Spearmen at Arms with Shields. I really like these guys. High melee defense can be a nice anvil compared to a lot of other units. Same things with these Men at Arms with pole arms, especially against the dinos. Granted, these guys are a little bit more vulnerable to the Skink Javelin fire because they don't have the shields of the Men at Arms with Shields, but I like them as a supplementary pick, kind of as a rear line option. Peasant Bowmen with Pox arrows are decent. I do believe that the fire arrow's got a small armor piercing buff. I need to check that. We can look at that in just a moment here. But Questing Knights did okay, but I think really you want to go with Grail Knights here, and Pegasus Knights, they're just so flimsy, and the fact that their pathing is kind of wonky, and they really don't seem to get much work done. I've never seen them really pay off in Total War Warhammer 2, so I don't really like that pick. I mean, it seems good on paper, but let's go ahead and take a look here and see what I might build. I do think that's a pretty challenging matchup for Bretonnia, but let's go ahead and take a look here and just kind of talk through some things. So Lewin, I mean, obviously he has the Lion's Shield, so if you do get caught out in a Tempest, you can pop that Lion's Shield and potentially negate a lot of that damage. It also has that missile resistance, so again, Skink Javelin fire, the Bastiladon, so on, all that will be mitigated by that there Lion's Shield. If we go ahead and take a look, he does have that. Of course, he has a regeneration as well. Beloved Son of Bretonnia, you can usually cut. Foe Seekers, if you have cost. Sword of Crone is pretty decent here. That minus 37 melee defense, if he's fighting another large dino. Minus 30 armor is pretty decent as well. For your infantry composition, I definitely think 4 Spearmen at Arms with Shields. You do want the Grail Relic to protect from fear and terror. A couple of men-at-arms with pole arms is not a bad idea, with maybe some peasant mobs out front. This is going to leave you plenty of funds if we go ahead and set it to large here to get some Grail Knights. And I really think that Grail Knights are going to be the answer here. 4 Grail Knights, very heavy cav contingent. You're banking a lot on these guys, so this might actually be a bit too much here. I might have spent too much, because we do need a caster of some kind, and I definitely would recommend Lore of Life. Ideally, you want Regrowth and Earthblood and a mount. So we're over about 200 points, so maybe we cut a few peasants and cut Foe Seeker, and there we are. So something like this against the dinos, again, I'm just kind of spitballing here, just kind of theory crafting a little bit, but something like this against the dinos, I think, because, I mean, Saurus are going to cut through your infantry anyway. Even Foot Squires, Saurus will cut through. They just, I mean, it's only 70 armor. They really have pretty poor combat stats at the end of the day. Battle Pilgrims are just not cost effective at all. I mean, they have... Let's go ahead and just compare for fun Battle Pilgrims to State Troop Swordsmen, which are actually a pretty decently cost-effective low-tier unit. But so 400 for the Swordsmen, and they have 32, 32, and 28. So Battle Pilgrims have less melee defense, the same melee attack, higher leadership, granted quite a bit higher leadership at 20. They have less health, 90 less health for who knows what reason. They do have 4 more weapon strength and charge bonus, and of course they have Frenzy, which the Swordsmen do not have. So, I mean, on paper it seems nice, but at the end of the day, you know, that lack of melee defense makes them even squishier, and they just really don't pay off. I mean, you compare Battle Pilgrims to another unit in its class, like even Flagellants, which are not the greatest comparison. They're honestly not the greatest unit in that class, but let's say Black Ark Corsairs, for example. 650, so only 50 points more. I mean, obviously they have equivalent, if not better, combat stats. They have an anti-infantry bonus. Obviously they don't have a missile block chance, but they have much heavier armor. You know, less... let's see. Yeah, Battle Pilgrims do have a slightly higher charge bonus and total weapon strength, but again, that anti-infantry bonus counts for a lot. And of course, the heavy armor and, you know, speed as well. The Black Ark Corsairs are extremely fast, so you just compare them to other units in that class, and they really don't seem to perform very well. Not the biggest fan of Battle Pilgrims at the end of the day. I think you're better off to go with just the higher melee defense type units, and then try and hammer home with the heavy cavalry. Granted, you're going to be banking a lot on these cav to pay off, but I mean, that's kind of the lore of Bretonnia, right? Is they have the cavalry and everything. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What kind of build would you take with Bretonnia against the Lizardmen? Let me know in the comments down below. Of course, you could always take the Fae Enchantress, but that's a whole nother discussion. I do think that the Fae may be more competitive. I mean, arguably, because then you could cut this, and if you bring her on that, and then just get the healing spells, all of a sudden, you have a lot cheaper lords. So now I have an extra 1,300 points to play around with. So you see how you can play around with your lord choices and kind of make some extra funds here. And yeah, I encourage you guys to play around with it and let me know what you think. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.